Hello, everybody. We're going to continue to look at the 7 principles of art and design, the 7 laws of art. But I feel like yesterday I was trying to do too much too fast. So today we're going to slow it down and just look at the first three laws in see me burp, contrast, movement, emphasis, balance, unity, rhythm, proportion. So, the first 3, contrast, movement, emphasis. Contrast is the difference between two things. Smooth, rough, big, small, bright, dull, loud, quiet, good, bad, happy, sad. In fact, our brain, some people might say that contrast is the main law of all art, whether it's a poem or a song or a film, that if it doesn't have contrast, that if it doesn't force you to go beyond binary patterns of thought and experience more of an arcane glimpse of the universe, that it's not really art. That's the function of art. But don't mean to get too weird on you. All right, we're going to start by looking at cereal boxes. Hey, there's Tony the Tiger. And he's orange. His background is blue. So that creates contrast. Orange and blue are opposite colors, and orange is a warm color. Warm colors tend to advance, and blue is a cool color. Cool colors recede. If the background were orange and Tony the Tiger were orange, it wouldn't stand out as much. It wouldn't grab your attention, and it might be more difficult to read visually. Now, you're going to see this on the Lucky Charms box as well. Green, the leprechaun is wearing green and the background is red. Or in this case, this classic cover of Sugar Smacks. Dig 'em. Oh, I never noticed that before. All right. And if the background were the same color as the frog, so if we had a green background and a green frog, it wouldn't be wrong, but it wouldn't be using the principle of contrast to really set the foreground apart from the background and make it pop, as people love to say that. It really pops. So anyway, this is one of my favorite sort of street artists, graffiti artists, Banksy. Nobody knows what he really looks like. Every interview, he hides his face and his voice. But anyway, here's a sort of like a anarchist throwing a Molotov cocktail, which is an improvised sort of explosive. But notice that he has juxtaposed, or he's replaced that with something opposite. Flowers, which you might give to someone as a symbol of peace or love. So he's taken peace and war and brought them together, opposites. There's contrast conceptually. Also, that's the only place where the color is, so that pops out. This artist, Rene Magritte, did the same type of thing with contrasting ideas, opposite ideas. Day versus night. You'll also notice that that's the area of greatest contrast where the light and the shadow meet, and that leads your eye there. You can see this idea of bringing opposites together, placing them next to each other, or even uniting them, is something you'll find in poetry, film, in this case, Romeo and Juliet by William Shakespeare. Oh, brawling love, oh, loving hate, oh, anything of nothing, first create. Heavy lightness, serious vanity, misshapen chaos, well-seeming form. Feather of lead, so a feather is light, a lead is heavy. Okay. Or in a pop song, or at least if you're a hippie in the 60s, this would be a pop song by Bob Dylan. The line is drawn, the curse is cast. The slow one now will later be fast. Present will be past. The order is rapidly fading. For the first one now will later be last. The times they are changing. Okay, so those are all opposites. The loser now is later to win, because the times they are a changing. Mothers, father, son, daughter. So thinking in opposites and bringing those opposites next to each other, bringing them together, is the oldest. It's the oldest trick in the book if you're an artist. In this case, Kehinde Wiley, another one of my favorite artists, that we can see, hopefully, if we go to the Milwaukee Public Art Museum. There's a couple Kehinde Wileys in the Milwaukee Public Art Museum. But notice the difference in texture, the smooth texture of the jacket and kind of the rough texture in the background. And here's another Kehinde Wiley. This is St. John the Baptist. But it's his reinterpretation of St. John the Baptist. Notice the very smooth, very realistic sort of main object. And then in the background, we have a very busy sort of graphic element in the background. There's contrast to make the foreground, the figure stands out from the background. There's also the quiet areas versus the busy areas. You might remember Mrs. Tzakis, if you had her in elementary school, telling you that you need a little quiet area where your eye can rest. The 5th of May, 1808. Again, we've looked at this painting several times. And now we're looking at the principle of emphasis. Why did I skip movement? It was a mistake. But contrast, movement, emphasis. We'll go back to movement. Emphasis is also sometimes known as focal point with an F. Sometimes my students think I'm saying vocal, as in vocal, okay? But focal, eyes, focus, focal point. The focal point is the main theme, the place where you want people to look first. In this case, it's this innocent man throwing his arms up as Napoleon's forces invade a small Basque village in Spain. And of course, why did he stand out? Because well, there were several reasons. To establish emphasis, to have a clear focal point, one way is the biggest shape. Your eye will usually go to the biggest shape. Another way is the brightest. So color intensity, very bright versus dull. Greatest contrast. So the lightest light next to the darkest dark, or the brightest bright next to the dullest dull, or the biggest big next to the smallest small. The area of greatest contrast will establish a focal point. And finally, the area of anomaly. What's anomaly? Well, A means not. It's not normal. Breaks the normal pattern. The area of anomaly. If you're an anomaly, that means you don't really fit in a sort of stereotypical category. So the area of anomaly here is green apple, green apple, green apple, red apple. It stands out. The red apple stands out. Red tomato, yellow tomato. Okay, does that make sense? Hey, it's a beetle, 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 beetle. One has a black face, shadowed. The face is totally in shadow, silhouetted. Anomaly. The thing that stands out as being different. Like in Sesame Street. It's like, 5 of these things belong together. 5 of these things are kind of the same. One of these things doesn't belong here. All right, so in this case, I wouldn't say it's the area of anomaly. I would say it is the greatest contrast. The man's shirt is very light, very bright, and stands up, or maybe I'd say the brightest shape. The largest, brightest shape is the man's shirt. So that's where my eye goes first. What on earth am I doing here with this overlay of the golden rectangle? I don't know. It'll pop up later. One of the compositional things that artists will do, and if you're taking a picture with your smartphone, You ever wonder what those lines are? There's a third over and a third over, but sometimes it's not. Now on mine, it's following the golden mean, not the rule of thirds. Where those intersecting thirds are is a good place to put the main object. So in this case, the man is a third of the way over. Movement. Contrast, movement, emphasis, balance, unity, rhythm, proportion. So anyway, I recorded this on my iPad, and then it was too fast, so I slowed it down. I guess I could chop it up. So why is this so slow? Because the pictures were going by too slow, or too fast, sorry. So everything's really slow. But movement, the path of the viewer's eye through a composition, the path of the viewer's eye. So there's some sort of visual hierarchy. This is especially important if you're working in graphic art, if you're making an advertisement. You want to grab people's attention, probably the biggest word or the largest picture, and then the information that's not as important is going to be small and smaller font and maybe off to the side, but your eye is supposed to go somewhere, and then you lead the viewer's eye through an ad, through a painting, through a meme. Movement also involves something called directional flow. So movement is a little bit difficult to explain. I mean, you know it. You know it when you see it. You understand it, but there's more to it. That's it's hard for me to define. Anyway, back to advertising. So here's an ad. The largest white area, I would say, is that store closing sale. Red also grabs your attention. Notice the blue cool colors recede, warm colors advance. That large red shape grabs your attention. And then the other information, like when are you open? Or you're open Monday, December for the sale. Doors open at 8 a.m. That's not as important, and hence it's smaller font. Okay, back to the May, the 5th of May, 1808. I was trying to show how the golden rectangle or the divine proportion was used in this composition. But anyway, even in cartoons, so a political cartoon, or I guess this is an editorial cartoon, these smug pilots have lost touch with the regular passengers like us. Who thinks I should fly the plane? That's, so the cartoonist is making a comment on, you'll hear a lot of people who run for public office say that they have no experience, and that's why you should vote for them. You don't hear that in other professions, but I'm not a career politician, therefore you should vote for me. But notice how there was a very clear focal point, because he was the darkest shape against a light background, and all the lines led you to the focal point of the cartoon. Now here is a famous painting called Guernica by Pablo Picasso. Nazi warplanes under the direction of the dictator Franco flew over a small village in a village called Guernica in Spain, and dropped bombs just to test out the new technology, to see how many people they could kill in the middle of a busy market day. And so Picasso made a statement about that, Picasso being Spanish and being very upset, about how this new technology, specifically bombers, airplanes were not used to deliver bombs in World War I. It wasn't until right before World War II that they developed this idea that you could fly over a village and drop a bunch of bombs. It was a new type of warfare. And the light bulb symbolizes the new technology, and the candle symbolizes the old technology. Vertical lines tend to be stable. They communicate a sense of stability, power. Horizontal lines tend to be calming. You might also notice something where the camera is tilted when you're watching an episode and there's a fight scene. They might do that. That is actually called Dutch angle. And it creates energy, tension, right? When you turn the camera like that. This is also used by painters, which we'll see in a bit. But here's some examples from Hollywood films of Dutch angle. Creates high energy, as opposed to horizontal lines tend to be calming. Vertical is stability. But Dutch angle, diagonal lines. And this again is another part of movement. So contrast, movement, emphasis. The Scream by Edvard Munch. I would say the main directional flow is diagonal. And notice how not only those lines, but everything kind of leads you to the man's face. That's the focal point.